There we go.
Bit of a lag there.
It's all right. That's all right. We're not professionals, which is what makes this somewhat tolerable.
Well, I concur. Sure. Two bros. Two bros. This week.
Two bros tonight. No sigh.
No sigh.
What are we on? What?
It's got to be 55, I think.
55. Holy
Is it 55 or is it? Is it 56? I don't know. Once again, the professionalism here is subpar.
Yeah, no, 55. You are correct.
Nice.
And as the title says, the focus is free will.
Well, more Sam Harris as he sees free will.
Okay.
I'm not necessarily subscribed to, his ideas, but I'm not also not convinced. Does that make sense? I'm kind of just, I don't know how I feel, but
you find it interesting. It's a thought that probably you don't really encounter typically, so it's worth talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a very short, like 2.5-page chapter out of an already very short book called Free Will by Sam Harris. He's not a believer. He doesn't think it's.
I was going to say, make sure there's some background to this.
So yeah, he doesn't
believe that there's free will, right?
He is not convinced that free will is a thing, but he also tries to build an argument that the lack of free will shouldn't remove our sense of agency or our sense of decision making, our sense of recognize or at least believing that we have the capacity to do things as we please or as we choose, I suppose. But yeah, no, he doesn't think free will exists. He thinks because of determinism, which is essentially this idea that the laws of physics are as they are. And if you reduce everything down to like the smallest level, it's all just physics in motion. And if we were able to know all the information about a given state of a human being, you would be able to predict their behavior. So I guess the idea is that what we perceive as us making decisions and having thoughts is really just incidental. Does that make sense? I'm probably horrible at explaining.
Well, I think to boil it down a little bit, now I have not read the whole book. I read the part that you sent me, but I imagine in what you're describing is, for example, as a kid grows up, he or she is influenced by millions of moments that will later determine your decision-making process later on in life, right?
Yeah.
Like there's the potential for that to happen.
No, but that's all that happens.
Right. Well, okay.
Much like how we can predict the orbit of Pluto, even though we've never seen one full cycle of Pluto. We know how long the orbit is. We know how long it takes. We know the path it takes. The idea is if you could read enough information, if you could know enough information about the state of a human being, you'd be able to predict what they do next. So there is this very interesting experiment that's been done where, and I'm not exactly sure how this works, but essentially they're people who sit down and they're hooked up to all sorts of monitors, brain scanners, whatever, what have you. I don't know what it is, right? But the idea is they have, I can't remember exactly what it is, but there's a button. Essentially, there's a button that they press, and they're free to press the button whenever they want. And as they do so, the scanners, let's call them, are essentially recognizing patterns when you choose to press that button. Oh God, I'm horrible at explaining this. This is what it is, right? So there's a light on the button, right? And when the light goes out, you're supposed to press the button. That's what it is.
Okay.
So the light turns off. The participants are pressing the button. They keep doing that. The machine is doing whatever the machine does. And all of a sudden, it's able to predict. I think I'm still explaining this horribly, but essentially what ends up happening is they end up getting tripped up because when they go to press the button under those certain conditions, it changes the conditions because it's predicting when they're going to press the button. So essentially it picked up on like the subconscious processing that's there. and was able to predict when the participant was going to press the button before the participant was conscious of even making that decision.
Yeah, but that sounds like, I mean, maybe it's because you're doing a poor job of explaining it, but that sounds like conditioning to me.
Yeah, it's absolutely because I'm doing a poor job of explaining
Okay,
it.
all right.
Essentially, what
that sounds like Pavlov's
no,
dog, ringing the bell.
It's more anticipating the moment when the participant is going to make that decision before they realize they've made it. If that makes sense.
It does, but I feel like I would have to read a lot more about it.
I could pull up a wonderful clip for you, but I might be breaking some copyright. It was in part of Vsauce's YouTube Red series. He does this crazy. He has a series with a bunch of different experiments, but that's one of the episodes, and it's fascinating because the participants, they start getting baffled. They realize that the computer knows when they're about to press the button, and then like it really unnerves them because it's predicting when they're going to make the decision before they make the decision.
I'm gonna have to.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to check that one out.
But
I get the premise, right? The premise is that if I can get as much information as possible, I can essentially predict the future.
Yeah.
Because I know what's going to happen, because I know all the variables and all the influences and et cetera,
including human beings, right?
Right.
So yeah. So anyway, so he's not a fan. He doesn't believe in it. And he has this very short 2.5 page piece on the implications of dispelling the illusion of free will. Mm-hmm. So he puts it. He says it has political implications. Let's see here. He says liberals and conservatives are not equally enthralled to it. Liberals tend to understand that a person can be lucky or unlucky in all matters relevant to his success. Conservatives, however, often make a religious fetish of individualism, which I thought was a very potent sentence.
You did. You highlighted that. Tell me why you highlighted that.
Well, because it's so true, though. I mean, pull yourself up by your bootstraps is always something that you hear, even when you're talking about people who have been incredibly unlucky with the circumstances they're given in life. What does he say on the next page? Hang on.
Let me jump in there just real quickly. Do you think, and I do have to agree, right, that conservatives do, I mean, I guess they make a religious fetish of individualism, as Sam Harris says, but specifically, do you think that that's also kind of what Sam Harris is saying? Like, just because I don't believe that you have free will doesn't mean you shouldn't continue to move forward? Like, isn't that kind of, if you boil it down, right, aren't conservatives kind of saying that? I mean, they're saying it in a very mean way, but isn't that kind of what we're trying to say? Like, yeah, you've had an unlucky lot in life, but that doesn't mean you should give up and quit.
I mean, I guess he's just more or less trying to relate the implications if free will was proven to not exist, it would change how we look at a lot of things in this country.
Certainly, but wouldn't you say that from a conservative's perspective, though? Because I think he even goes on to say, if I'm not mistaken, like, of course, and I'm quoting here, of course, conservatives are right to think that we must encourage people to work to the best of their abilities and discourage free riders wherever we can. That's page 62, about halfway down. I think that's kind of, he's kind of giving the, a tip of the hat to that, saying, yeah, just because you don't have free will doesn't mean that you can just do nothing or just quit or give up or whatever, negative connotation you want to put to having no free will.
Yeah, obviously. I think he was just kind of taking a shot at the amount of importance that conservatives place on individualism past the point of reasonable expectations, I think is what he was saying.
Okay.
But obviously, I mean, I'm absolutely on board with him when he says that, like to the best of your ability, you have to at least
in that effort. Yes, absolutely. I'm there. And he might address this somewhere in here. I can't remember specifically, but you can take the other side of the page to that and say like, okay, because to me that's an extreme conservative that would say something like that, and an extreme liberal would say, you are a victim. You don't need to do anything. We should be doing things for you because you in fact are a victim of insert here, right? The patriarchy, whatever the case may be, right?
Ableism.
So to me, he's taking a spectrum and he's focusing a little more specifically on the conservative side of the coin. Whereas for me, the spectrum is shitty on both ends. And I could be misquoting here because I feel like he might have said something. Let's see.
No, I think it's because the right puts individualism on such a pedestal would imply that. Yeah, I mean, I guess I see what you're saying. Are you saying he's being unfair in his criticism here?
I'm saying
he's not leveling it equally.
Right. I'm saying he's not looking at both sides of the spectrum.
I think there's just more implications for the right in terms of free will if it weren't to exist. I think that's just the only point.
But I think the idea for conservatives, though, and I get what you're saying.
Because the left is always about like, oh, let's help people get back on there. Let's help people get on their feet. Let's help. Whereas the right is like, if you don't have health, if you can't afford healthcare in this country, maybe you're shit out of luck.
I don't know that that's necessarily true. Like your average conservative actually says that. I don't think that's true. Again, I think that you're taking or not you, but Sam in this particular instance is taking an extreme example because again, I feel like you can say that all the way to the left as well.
Is he talking about politicians or is he talking about political beliefs? Because I think there's a difference there.
Well, I guess in this case, what would it be? I feel like that's his political belief.
Oh, we're on opposite pages then.
We are.
Because when we look at politicians, like, for example, healthcare, I mean, when you look at conservative politicians, they just want a private system. They don't want to protect people that... I mean, what was that Obamacare that... what was it? An insurance company can't turn you away for a...
Pre-existing condition.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That was like groundbreaking. I didn't know that wasn't a thing beforehand. You could just get turned away from healthcare. Like, let's say you don't have healthcare and you develop cancer.
Right.
Go, oh shit! I don't have healthcare.
Well, I think fucked. Right. I think. Yeah.
Conservatives would say, well, you took the risk at not buying healthcare, so sorry, you're shit out of luck. Whereas liberals, I think, would say, wow, you have cancer. Let's not bury you in financial debt. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're right.
So
I guess I was coming from, again, political, philosophical.
Sure. That's different.
I butchered that terribly. I apologize. But so, I mean, that's what I was reading from this. And if we're looking at it from a philosophical perspective or a belief perspective from the political party, I doubt you find that many conservatives saying, you don't have health insurance? Well, fuck you.
Well, again, are you talking politicians or
people? Again, constituents.
Right.
Even with politicians, I don't think there's that many.
Their voting history would suggest otherwise, is all I'll say about
your voting history can also be influenced by... right, a position you're put in. Just because somebody votes that way doesn't necessarily mean they believe that specific thing, right?
Okay, then don't be a politician.
Well, that's kind of easy for you to say.
That's crazy.
I think that when you get into the world of politics, especially with a two-party system that we have, there's a lot of influence, right? If you want to be a Republican or you want to be a Democrat and you're not conforming to our ideals,
no, sir.
You don't get. Hold on, you don't get funding.
Well, you don't get my vote. Here's the thing. All of these
I think you're taking a very naive perspective.
Come up to rank and file and absolutely level the establishment. Where are these politicians?
Bernie.
We can do better.
I'm not. Oh, hold on. If you're gonna turn this into an argument of we can do better,
I'm
like
just kidding.
that's such an easy thing. I didn't know Cyril was on the podcast.
I was just trying to supplement.
Let's just
Cyril
go
in a bit.
straight to the moral high ground and not
Just
actually
trying to-
address the nuanced perspectives and challenges of a situation. Just go straight for the we can do better. Yeah, no shit.
Let me ask you this: if you
Sure.
were to take political ideology,
Mhm.
which side believes in free will more?
Right. The right.
I think that's what he's addressing here. I think that's why he mentions conservatives.
I get that. I merely feel like you should also point out the opposite of that, right?
Yeah, but do you always have to? Like if I wrote a book about fascism, do I also have to write a book? Do I have to add in the communists? I don't know. I mean, like just because he's not leveling shots at the other side doesn't mean that he's supportive of what the opposite extreme of what he's talking about. You know what I mean? I phrased that horribly, but
I feel like when you're addressing specifically politics, United States politics, I mean, there's two sides,
right.
And what would the political? Okay, let me phrase it this way: what would the political implication of not having free will be for Democrats or liberals or the left or whatever nomenclature you put on that group of people? What would that be?
They would probably stop putting people in prison. They'd probably stop punishing like murderers because they're only a victim of circumstance. Surely,
Right.
sure.
Is that a good thing?
Well, to be fair, if you read this book, he does kind of address that.
Does he? Okay. What
Just
does he
not in
say?
this particular
Is there any way you
chapter.
can paraphrase it?
Well, he says that that's not how one should react. There's still practical means. Like say you have somebody that is a pedophile and they've committed an offense 2 times. And he's going to trial for this second case, what have you. And we come to find out that he had a horrible childhood and that he was molested and sexually abused growing up. But that doesn't mean that we should then let him go because he's a victim of circumstance. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't at least separate him from where he can we can't separate him from where he can still do harm, especially if it's his second offense. Like even if people don't have free will, there are still practical means to punishing people for the safety and greater good, I suppose, of the rest of society. He does address that, though. I mean, which I totally agree with, regardless of the idea of free will or not. Even if people were completely a victim of circumstance, it's just practical to separate them from the rest of the public that doesn't want to live in fear of having their children kidnapped or family members murdered, what have you. People getting their stuff robbed.
Right. Yeah. I can't really disagree with you on those.
I mean, I don't know. I'm still very conflicted on this whole free will thing. How about you, dude? Any thoughts?
I think that being able to calculate a high probability of being able to understand a person's decision-making process to the point where you can accurately assume or guess what their decision is going to be in a given moment doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have free will. I don't know if I'm ready to make that jump yet.
But that would suggest you're not consciously making decisions, is what he's saying.
What do you mean?
So
or what does he mean, I should say?
If it's a subconscious process, because we know that there is subconscious processing. There's stuff that's going on that prompts us to make decisions or to have thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to be we're not conscious of that process. We're just conscious of when those decisions or behavior are happening. That's the only time we're conscious of it, if that makes sense. I mean, again, I'm not entirely convinced, and I'm not the greatest orator to argue for this side, obviously. But he definitely does make a compelling argument, I should say. I'm just horrible at explaining it. I wish I could bring up that. I probably could. Hang on.
No, because then you're gonna get kicked. YouTube, I'm sure. Anyway, I just, again, I don't know that being able to take in all that data and accurately get. I guess my point is that, and I feel like what he's saying is that if I can guess what you're going to do or what the outcome is going to be in a given situation, that must mean that you don't have any free will. Right? Is that essentially what he's saying? Not necessarily predeterminism, but almost.
I'm trying to find a better way to explain what he's so everything that happens had to have had a causal factor that preceded it, right?
Correct.
So you would have to imagine that there's a long chain of causal events that preceded all the way back to the conditions of the universe that were set when it sort of popped into existence, or however that happened. So that if you could accurately know all the information about a given system, you could absolutely make predictions for it. Not even just 2 seconds into the future, but I could tell you what humans are going to be doing 1,000 years from now. You know what I mean?
Right.
If you had all that information.
That I understand that. And I guess my point
dominoes
is
falling. And we're simply just conscious passerbyers. Like, it is already, the conditions that are set right now have already determined what's going to be happening for you in a year. Is the idea.
In 10 years and 50 years and what my great-grandchildren will be doing.
Right. It's all causal rather than us consciously acting independent of the physics that dominate the universe.
But there has to be some level of like chaos to it somewhere. Like, I guess the way that I imagine this is that it ends up being more like a probability. Like there's a 99.9% chance that this will occur.
Yeah, but you have to also respect the big assumption that's going on for this sort of thought experiment. So for us, when we recognize chaos, we say things are chaotic, nothing happens the same twice ever. It's because we are not too keen on understanding the very small nuances, the different starting points for every time we see a certain instance of something. So we say, oh, that didn't happen the same way twice. It's because both times the initial conditions were way different. So if you were to know all the information about a system, chaos isn't a thing anymore. You know all of the conditions. You know where every single atom is. You know how that neuron's going to fire, right? And it all has causal effects that precede it. I don't know how else to explain it. Again, I'm not convinced of this argument.
I think you're doing actually a really good job at explaining it. I guess for me, it's just struggling with, what it actually is and what it means for everything.
Right.
And that's something that, of course, is so grandiose that I am not going to bend my stupid brain around it in 20 minutes.
you know, if you had free will, you could.
Right.
I'll to just really display how much he believes. I guess to better describe what he really believes about this, he says that between like a fruit fly and a human being, we're both very grounded in just automatic processes. Because you wouldn't say, you wouldn't give agency to a fruit fly. How much agency would you give to a worm? You know what I mean? He's saying that we are objectively no different. We're just a bit more complex. We're
Yeah,
complex, but we're
I
still
agree with that. That doesn't necessarily mean that.
still predictable.
Yeah.
I don't know. Again, I'm not
I get
convinced.
for me where I would have to bend my brain specifically for this, it would be if in fact any of these other theories were true, right? Like a multiverse, right? Because the conditions are for this universe.
Quantum mechanics.
Yeah, I don't know that actually factors into that yet. And I say
I
yet because
also
obviously 100 years from now we may actually understand it to a level that is like, oh wow,
right.
makes sense. But like right now, I can't bend my brain around it because of these other things that are floating out there that we don't understand to a large degree.
But again, if you consider the thought experiment, like you
Mm-hmm.
would know the quantum state and you would know exactly what would proceed. Maybe, I don't know. I was under the impression that quantum mechanics was inherently unpredictable, that everything was sort of a probability. But
Right, and that was
maybe
my understanding, which is what throws a big monkey wrench
that's
into
what
the
I thought.
idea
Yeah.
of.
And the other thing that I also considered was that humans have a remarkable capacity. We are self-aware, obviously. We have sentience.
Mm-hmm.
And we are also able to influence the environment around us.
Mm-hmm.
But then Sam Harris would probably just still say, well, all of that is still, you still just have causal factors moving the gears there. So I don't know. Like my argument would be, well, we can influence the environment around us, which also can influence us. So in that way, maybe we have some semblance of free will or some sort of agency.
I'm imagining that the explanation there would be that, well, it would be natural for that to occur at that point because of all the conditions that were put in place before then.
Right, exactly. Right. So,
and
I got to give you the book. It's a very short read and it's interesting.
I'm going to have to read it for sure.
It's such a short read, an hour maybe.
Sounds more like a pamphlet.
It feels like a novella almost. Like that size, not, you know what I mean?
But there's just in the 2.5 pages you sent, there's just so much for me, like thought provoking, right? Of course, me, I point to, okay, like I get what you're saying about conservatives, but what does this mean for liberals? And I get what you're saying, that it means more because a lot of their political ideals and religions, quite frankly, are based on that. But it also that's what I'm saying, is it also impacts liberals. And not only liberals, but I'm sure there's a section in there for religion and for, numerous other things. In which free will is a very important component of that, whatever that belief structure may be. But this is also what I get for only reading 2.5 pages.
Yeah. Well, he sums it up pretty well too, because I mean, you also have to acknowledge that he gives conservatives a very fair shake in those very same pages.
He does, and I feel like you can do the same for liberals as well.
Well, right at the end here, he shows us what the best course of action is, which is usually middle ground. He says, where people can change, we can demand that they do so. Where change is impossible or unresponsive to demands, we can chart some other course. In improving ourselves and society, we are working directly with the forces of nature, for there is nothing but nature itself to work with. All right, that last sentence didn't really have anything to do with like that middle ground, but
no, but for me, like when you first read it, right, because liberals and conservatives are not equally enthralled to it. Liberals tend to understand that a person can be lucky or unlucky in all matters relevant to his success. Like that's not a, you know what I mean, a negative.
No, but that's inherent. But that's inherent to the core belief of that ideology. So again, if we're talking about pure political ideology, let's not talk about people who call themselves liberals or conservatives on either side.
Certainly.
We're talking about pure ideology.
Mm-hmm.
Progressives are there. They put up the social safety nets because they know that people can fall on hard times. That's inherent to that ideology. Whereas conservatives are much less sympathetic to that. That's inherent to the ideology. We're not talking about like some far right or left beliefs. We're not talking about pockets of people who have certain beliefs.
You say that, but you keep going on that sentence right there. Many seem to have absolutely no awareness of how fortunate one must be to succeed at anything in life. Like that, I feel like you are pointing to a group of people.
Right, but it's inherent to the ideology.
I get that, but you're talking about specific people, a group, right? Because there are conservatives like myself who are conscious of the fact that yes, you have to be insanely lucky or unlucky to be input into certain positions, but that does not excuse you from continuing to try.
Are you a
Regardless
conservative?
of free, I would consider myself slightly more conservative.
Yeah, but you wouldn't consider yourself a conservative.
No, but the idea, like my thought processes, and I guess this is the difficulty of going to right liberal versus conservative, is that there's just tons of people in between somewhere.
Yeah, obviously.
But I'm sure there's plenty of people who consider themselves conservative, but also understand that yeah, there's a luck factor. The fact that I was born in America, the fact that I have all of my senses, the fact that I have all of my appendages, right? I'm insanely lucky to have all of these things in my life. But I also understand that since I do have all this luck and I do have all this fortune, that I need to do something with it. I guess is what I'm saying.
Conservatism generally refers to right-wing politics which advocate the preservation of personal wealth and private ownership and emphasize self-reliance and individualism.
I guess I'm just projecting at this point.
But you see what I'm saying? It's like he's addressing that individualism as it relates to free will.
Mm-hmm.
And the right is the one that loves the idea of individualism. People can always change. They can always pick themselves up. People can always do better. People can always, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. No.
I mean, like I said,
it makes sense to me.
See, of course, conservatives are right to think that we must encourage people to work to the best of their abilities and discourage free riders wherever we can. I mean, you know, if you're upset that he like didn't lay some criticism at any sort of liberal ideology, you can at least take away the fact that he gave you that. Like, he's not just criticizing conservatives here. He understands that there is a practical means to pursue individualism. It's just not, it's not something we should pursue at the cost of those who fail to make it for whatever reason.
Yeah. Do you think that people, if you did come out and say, right, you don't have any free will, do you think people need the concept of free will to continue pressing forward in enterprising situations?
He also addresses that in this book.
I just got to read the fucking book. I just got to read it then, because I'm just going to keep asking this, questions that he's already addressed in the book.
I can go ahead and just tell you what he says.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Again, you're getting it through like a secondhand, illiterate almost source, but I'll try my best. He does source 2 studies that talk about the observed behavior of people under the explicit impression. So I think one group of people would read some sort of academic literature about how free will doesn't exist. And then the behavior of these people afterwards was a bit more chaotic. They were like more prone to be aggressive, and they were less prone to be ambitious, or just stuff like that. And so he definitely acknowledges that that might be a risk, but he also explains why he thinks if we were to quote unquote release the illusion of free will, we would actually be able to better ourselves as a society. In the sense that when you acknowledge things are out of your control, you can be more self-aware to change the conditions that surround you. In the sense that since we're like beholden to influences internal and external, if we can then try and take control of that and change those internal and external influences or sources of influences, that then can influence our behavior to be better, different. Like he's saying, we also shouldn't lose our sense of agency as a result, because we still have, I mean, it very much feels like I make decisions consciously. Like I can just sit here and slap myself in the face if I want to. I'm not going to, but I mean, maybe I should for science, but I probably won't. So, he's saying that to react to the idea of free will being an illusion shouldn't be a cause for hopelessness. It should be a cause for like celebration. It should free us, is what he says. Ironically.
Sure, I would agree with that. It should, but my question is would it?
Well, I mean, to a different extent, I've asked that same question about like a belief in a higher power. Do you think society could endure that if they were to lose that belief as a whole?
I think that the way that we're going now, we will be able to, because it is a slow.
Yeah, but people put bad belief in other places. And like a lot of people.
Where do you think they're putting them?
Oh man, astrology, spirituality.
Yeah, but that's always been around.
Yeah, but more so now because people are turning away from established old sort of traditional religion, and now they're becoming spiritual. Like I'm talking about.
I would disagree with you a little bit.
Really?
Yeah, no, I think there's a large sect of people. I mean, maybe not insanely large, but I think there's a bigger sect of people that are consuming things like books by Sam Harris or Jordan Peterson, which is putting the onus on the person.
Jordan Peterson is not irreligious.
What do you mean?
Jordan Peterson is not. He is religious. Jordan Peterson.
Is he?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
He is actually. You should look at more stuff by him because he does a lot on that. He
does a lot on religion and what stories are being taught from them. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's religious.
Well, he's hard one to pin down. I saw a debate between him and this guy named Matt Dillahunty, who I think is just an absolute brilliant debater. You should watch it, by the way. It's a very interesting watch. It's like an hour and a half, but it's great. It's Jordan Peterson and Matt Dillahunty. But essentially, Jordan Peterson is arguing for the pro, and obviously Matt Dillahunty, who ran a show called The Atheist Experience in Austin, Texas, is arguing for the con. But yeah, no, Jordan Peterson definitely he. Let me explain it this way. He believes, as far as I can tell, he believes that believing in a higher power has practical means to better your life, even if that belief isn't necessarily true.
Okay. That doesn't mean he's religious.
Yeah, but I don't know how to explain it because he's a little wish-washy about it.
Because, all right, I know this isn't
a very definitely dependable not irreligious.
Site. Was this Quora? Is that right?
Quora. Yeah, whatever that is. Whatever. I don't know.
Somebody wrote on here, and I'm just going to go right down to the edit. More recently, Dr. Peterson, in a debate with Sam Harris, implied that it is very likely that there is some sort of metaphysical reality that religion has been trying to explain. He compared it to astrology and alchemy in the sense of them being flawed precursors to astronomy and chemistry. It is hard to determine what exactly he means by metaphysical, though. While it seems like his views have slightly shifted in various ways, it still does not look like he holds any religious beliefs, at least not in the traditional sense of the word.
Or at least Wikipedia? Not publicly.
I'm on Quora.
Oh, yeah, you did literally just say that. Sorry.
In the end, it's much more accurate to simply label him an agnostic. Granted, an agnostic that sees the value in the utility of religion due to the deep understanding of the psychological ideas that religion has in it.
Okay, I gripe with that. Agnostic is not a position of faith. It's a position of what you believe to be true. I hate that term. Agnostic doesn't mean like you don't believe. Agnostic is a position of what you think. You can be an agnostic Christian, right? You can believe that Christianity is true, but you can acknowledge that there's no way to prove it. Agnosticism is just a position of whether or not something is provable.
I think ultimately, though, my point reading that is to say that he's not religious. No, I get that, and I get where you're coming from. But all overall, at least my impression has not been that he has been religious. I think that he has used religion to try to explain psychological.
No, I think he truly believes that there is something that exists greater than just human beings on planet Earth.
Okay, but that doesn't mean that you're religious.
That is okay. Do you want me to call it spiritual? Okay, here we go. In a 27 interview, Peterson identified as a Christian. However, in 2018, he has stated that he holds an agnostic position on the existence of God. Oh, so he's literally an agnostic Christian. So he's a Christian, but he recognizes that it's unfalsifiable. Like you cannot prove or disprove the existence of God, just much like you can't disprove or prove the existence of Santa Claus or a very small teapot orbiting the sun. Right? I don't know. What was that aside for? Why were we talking about Jordan Peterson?
I completely forgot.
His religiosity. Oh, you were bunching him in with Sam Harris.
Oh, yeah. I forgot why, though.
Oh, yeah. You were talking about how people are reading more literature by people of that fabric.
Oh, yeah. Wouldn't you say that that's the case? Like, think 100 years ago, people didn't have conversations like this.
No, of course. I mean, the information age has done wonderful things for information, but I think it's also led to the spread of, I think the belief in astrology is on the rise as a result of the internet. I think the belief in other metaphysical, whatever have you, just because we have access to information doesn't mean people are able to accurately parse through it.
But what I'm saying is that because we have access to information, there are more people that are getting to a better place.
But I don't know that. So originally I had said that that's how I feel in the position of like God. Because if we were talking about society losing their faith in that as a whole, you're saying you think we'd survive that just fine. And I'm not sure.
I said at the pace that we're going now.
You think that'll happen?
Yeah.
Do you think that people will sort of lose hope? Or do you think it'll change society drastically if we change from a spiritual or a religious nation to an irreligious nation?
No, I think that more people will find a deeper and more fulfilling meaning to their own personal lives as we slowly go away from religion as we know it today, right? Religion as we know it tomorrow might, we might have a church of, whatever, I don't care what you want to call it, right? Fill in the blank. Church of ABC, but the focus of Church ABC is to continue to grow your knowledge of not just the world, but the cosmos as well, and how that does relate to you on some level. That might be the church of tomorrow. You might go to a preaching, and you'll be reading out of a Sam Harris book, or or a Neil deGrasse Tyson book, or you know what I mean. Like that may be the church of the future.
Yeah, but if we as a society lose faith in the idea of any sort of soul or any sort of continuance of the self after death, you don't think that would change us as a society? Because I think it would. Wait. So you're not really?
Well, why? Why would that change us on such a fundamental level that we would just self-destruct?
Well, ask any.
Most people live in the here and now. They're not worried about when the fuck they die.
I'm a little worried, bro.
Well, why?
Because it's gonna suck, man.
Why would it suck? You're just gonna disappear.
Yeah, that's the part that blows.
Well, that's the whole point then. If you know that you're just gonna disappear, what do you do with your time that you have?
No. I understand that, but the point is, I still have to disappear. That blows.
Okay.
I understand that. It gives
the cosmos, the galaxy, the universe doesn't give a fuck what you think, bro.
I understand. That's the part that sucks.
So how does one combat that? I know for me, how do I combat that, right?
I don't know.
I put all my effort and my focus into my daughters.
No, I understand. Listen, I'm not
No,
saying
but you
that it,
don't.
I'm not saying that it doesn't give greater context for our lives now. It absolutely does.
But you were just literally saying that it
I'm
doesn't.
saying it just sucks. No. I said it does. I said it absolutely does.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying it does give us, it makes things seem a lot more profoundly important, but it also still sucks when your time is up, right? Surely. It's going to kind of blow.
I
It's
don't know,
it's
man.
like you're at a raging party and it's like 9 p.m. Somebody taps
Right.
you on the shoulder and they're like, "Bro, you got to go." And you just sulk as you walk away from that awesome party. You're like, "Damn, dude.
Well, do you think it's just
Just
the
having a great
illusion of
time."
control?
What?
Why this hits people so hard? Like they want to be in control, quote, of when they go.
No, I think there's a very fundamental fear of just not existing. As somebody that currently exists and is very fond of it, that idea kind of blows. Wait. So you're saying though that you don't know if society could survive losing the idea of having free will, but you're fine. You think society would be fine
No,
losing.
that's not at all what I said. That's not what I said.
So what happens if society loses the? Let's say free will is an illusion, and we
Yeah.
all become aware of this.
Yeah.
Do you think that changes us?
Yeah. I think.
Okay, so
I
that is
think.
what you're saying.
Well, no, but you're saying like it'll be destroyed. I don't think it's a negative thing. Is what I'm saying.
No, I'm not
If
saying
we
we'll
get
be
to the point, wait,
destroyed.
if we get to the point, I guess this is my thought process. If we get to the point where we can prove that free will doesn't exist and that we can accurately predict what's going to happen in any given situation, don't you think we would just predict what would happen 1,000 years from now and start working towards that anyway? Because we already know what's going to happen.
Well, that's a bit meta now, though, because then we're consciously changing. So the moment we read the future and we're aware of it, we've already changed the conditions it was predicting. Well, I guess unless it was
So
predicting.
then, could you ever predict the future?
Well, this is where it kind of falls. No. This is why this is why it's a thought experiment. You're not supposed to take it literally.
Hey, fuck
Thought
you! I'm going
experiment.
literal all day. No, I get the thought experiment.
God.
But I guess the point is that free will. Then the question would be: could you ever actually prove that there is no free will?
No, I don't even think we can accurately define it. That's why I'm not ready to jump.
That's a good point.
I'm not ready because here's the thing, right? If we don't have free will, which maybe we do, maybe we don't, maybe we have some amount of free will, whatever that even fucking means. My question to Sam Harris then would be, what would somebody with free will look like? What is objectively different about their behavior from our perceived behavior?
We put them in mental institutions.
Oh, what? What does that even mean?
That means that people that are stir crazy actually have free will. That's why we're so scared of them.
Wow. Oh, I see it now, dude. And this is why they faked the moon landing on 9/11.
And the water turns the frogs gay.
Oh my god. Do you know Sandy Hook?
Oh no.
Oh god. That's one of the ones. That's like the big three, isn't it? It's the moon landing, it's 9/11, and it's Sandy Hook. Those are the ones. Let's not get into that though. We can go ahead and wrap this up if you want.
We are gonna wrap this up. If anyone ever listens to this, don't forget, you have no free will.